Alright, so look guys, the wind up here is pretty extreme, so I don't know what the sound's going to be like. I'm trying to cover the mic as best I can with my hand. No professional tools here. But look, I want to look at all the professions, and the reason I've come out is because I want to get at one with nature. No, it's not really. It's just because got building work going on indoors. It's a bit too noisy, so I thought I'd come out and do this intro. So what we're going to look at is, now we know sort of what's in and what's out of phase 1, what are going to be the best professions. So I'm not going to break this down by class. I'm not going to lie, I was going to do like a class, best professions for each class. But I think what's going to be better is if I just do one video telling you what's in and what's out of phase 1 and what benefits you get from each profession, and then let you decide what professions you want to go. And yes, don't worry, it's not going to be everyone's going leather working, because RIP drums. So if you're lucky like me and you've got your very own personal herbalist, which I'll show you now. Then Alchemy could be a solid option. Let me tell you why. So Alchemy could be a solid option for you. Now, not only can it make a plethora, and yeah, I can't really believe I just used the word plethora, of potions, flasks. So you've got your flask of fortification for your tanks. You've got flask of mighty restoration, possibly for healers, just for MP5. Pure death, which is for your frost spells, fire spells, and shadow spells. So obviously a lot of use there. I'm not going to go through all of the things that you can make, but basically lots of flasks, lots of elixirs, lots of potions. You know, these are things that people are going to be using a lot of. Now, you can specialize in 3 different specializations. There's Transmute Master, Elixir Master, and Potion Master. All of these have, basically, if you go Transmute Master and you transmute Primal Might, which is going to be a huge item that's in demand by almost all classes, because a lot of the crafted gear needs Primal Might. Then you've got a chance at proccing extra Primal Mights when you craft them, and they're an expensive craft. I'm not going to put any gold amounts on it, but Primal Mights I can see being very expensive from the word go. So if you go Transmute Master, it does require a bit of investment to begin with, because you'll have to actually hand in Primal Mights to be able to become a Transmute Master. But here's a pro tip. What you can do is go Potion Master first, which is actually the cheapest of the 3. The potions are relatively cheap to craft or cheap to buy, whatever. And then you can pay 150 gold to switch to Transmute Master. Now, there's no way on earth you're going to get 4 Primal Mights for less than the potions for the quest plus 150 gold. So if you want to go Transmute Master, I recommend going Potion Master. Once you've done the quest and you're now officially a Potion Master, speak to the Potion Master trainer, pay 150 gold to unlearn it, then go to the Transmute Master trainer and become a Transmute Master for 150 gold. Well, the 150 gold that you just paid to unlearn it. Just saying. But you've also got potions, you've also got elixirs, so you can go Potion Master. Lots of people are going to be using haste potions on almost every pull, I would say, you know, especially for your DPS. Obviously, your mana potions and fell mana potions are going to be in demand. There's just a lot of gold that can be made from it. As for actual perks for your character, specifically from a power gain perspective, there is very little when it comes to Alchemy. Not before Phase 5. In Phase 5, you'll get these trinkets, but you won't be able to get them before Shattered Sun Offensive comes out. Now, Shattered Sun Offensive is obviously part of the Sunwell Plateau patch. So if you're going Alchemy in the hopes of getting these trinkets, obviously you won't get them until the very late stages of the game. However, what you can get from the Shattar Quartermaster when you're revered is you can learn how to make the Alchemist Stone. So as I say, this requires revered with the Shattar, and it's 15 strength, it's basically 15 all stats, but also increases the effect of healing and mana potions. Now, the one class that really stands out for using this, for me personally, is a Feral DPS, and it's not just because I'm a Feral DPS, but obviously power shifting and using mana potions during your power shift is a very big part of the rotation. Plus, you get crazy amounts of attack power from strength, you get reasonable amounts of attack power from agility, stamina is survival, so it's obviously useful, intellect is useful for power shifting, spirit minorly useful but largely neither here nor there. Then you've also got Enchanting, but the thing you've got to bear in mind with Enchanting is there's no +4 stats in Phase 1 now, which we thought there was going to be, but originally it was actually Hyjal Rep, so Scale of the Sands, and then they moved it to Lower City, but it's gone from Lower City, so it's back at Scale of the Sands. So with there being no plus stats, really that can make your choices quite difficult, particularly if you was going Enchanting to be, say, a Prot Warrior or even a Feral Druid to a certain extent. But Feral DPS, they get about 13 attack power for the 2+ weapon damage ring enchant. So still, it's 26 attack power overall, whereas if you had the 4
plus stats, then you're going to get 14 attack power. I'm rounding up. So you're looking at a 1 attack power difference between phase 1 and then phase 3 when we obviously get the +4 stats. So I think Enchanting can still be a solid option, specifically for a Feral Druid. But I don't know how you rogues and warriors feel, how your weapon damage will scale. But ultimately, no +4 stats for Enchanting.
But do not fear. You've still got your plus healing enchant from the Shatter on your rings, and you've still got your plus spell power enchant, which comes from the Keepers of Time, which is obviously doing Black Morass, Old Hills, Red Foothills, just those Caverns of Time instances. And then finally, the 2 weapon damage comes from the Consortium rep. But forget the ring enchants, that's just a personal game. What else can you get? Obviously, you've got those big enchants like Mongoose and Executioner and whatever else, you know, any of these enchants that are going to be in high demand, and you've always got a good source of gold because you get lots of greens while you're questing, blues from instances. You know, you can make gold from that profession without even having to really work for it, which obviously is good. And if it's like an ult, or if it's your main ult, or even if it's your main, it doesn't really matter, and you're on another character, you can send all your greens to it, DE it, you know, the dust, the essences, the shards, they're all gonna be worth gold throughout the entire expansion, like obviously the old world ones were in Classic. So it's a good money making profession anyway, but really personal gain is probably all we're bothered about here, as in personal power gain, which is obviously the ring enchants. And with no +4 stats, that may change your decision on what you're going to do, but you can still get 2 weapon damage on each ring, you can get spell power, and you can get healing on each ring. So still a solid option.
And then Engineering. Engineering's always a solid option because, I mean, it's basically for tanks. You know, any pre-raid BIS guide, anything like that you look at, a lot of people say, you know, Engineering is for tanks, myself included, because of the big stamina trinkets. They're such an early power spike, but ultimately it's not all about stamina. You know, as you know, you might replace them for defense trinkets or armor trinkets or, you know, whatever. Ultimately, stamina is not king, but it's very useful. So to get those 2 stamina trinkets early on for tanks is solid. But outside of that, you've got the flying machine, you've got frost grenades, which actually for tanks are really useful. Not particularly feral tanks because you can't use these gadgets in shapeshift form. So I suppose I should put that out there straight away. But there's a lot of useful engineering items, even just the sort of teleports to Toshley Station and stuff like that. You know, there's a lot of things you can do. But let's have a look a little bit more at what you can get from engineering, which you might want.
I suppose I should really start by saying no, the engineering goggles are currently not in the game, which I'm saying now, if they're not in the game, they're probably not going to be in the game until could possibly be phase 3, which would be slightly concerning, but I personally would say phase 2. Going by the actual release schedule, it should technically be phase 3 when they come in, due to them being a part of the Black Temple patch, basically. So yeah, that could be a little bit worrying. But ultimately, the goggles are not in. Now, there's a new repair bot, but you can still make the old one, where you get the schematic from Blackrock Depth, so that's not a problem. But the new one, yeah, you can get a new repair bot. And then I think I would be a little bit of an idiot if we didn't speak about the moat extractor. So the Zap Throttle moat extractor, which is a great way of getting primals, but I would say it's probably going to be fairly heavily farmed. Now, what you can make to go with these is a pair of ultra spectropic detection goggles. That's a mouthful. Now, these allow you to show the locations of gas clouds on the minimap. So while you're flying around, at least they'll pop up like if you was herbing or like if you was mining. You still do have, depending on whether you go gnomish or goblin, your teleporter obviously, but now you get a new one as well, which if you're goblin is the dimensional ripper, which takes you to area 52, and if you're goblin, takes you to Toshley Station. So Toshley Station is in Blades Edge Mountains, and area 52 of course is in Neverstorm. So you can still make useful scopes, so increasing damage by 12. There's also a scope that increases your crit rating by 28. You can make the ornate corium rifle. There are a few little bits that can be sort of useful, but they're not amazing. The rocket boots extreme light are very nice as well, and they also give you 47 plus damage and healing, which you're probably not going to use these boots for that, but engage the rocket boots to greatly increase your speed most of the time. Yes, they can go wrong, but still a very nice little tool to have at your disposal. You can also make the mana potion injector and the healing potion injector, although I don't know where that is, which is nice because this can actually save room in your inventory. So if you're someone who uses a lot of mana potions, these stack up to 20 and it's only going to take 1 slot up, so this is actually quite nice. I suppose this is what I'm trying to say when it comes to engineering. A lot of it is quite nice and it's fun, but outside of that, there's not really much of a power gain for anyone outside of someone who wants a couple of stamina trinkets. But there is, of course, that gold potential of going around and finding gas clouds and getting moats. So you've heard moat extractor this, gas cloud that, and if you're a bit like,
No, I don't even know what the fuck a quail is.
Then let me show you what it is. So firstly, that's what a gas cloud will look like if you was looking for them in Nagrand. I'll put it out there straight away that you cannot use your mote extractor in flight form. I'll demonstrate now. But basically, you go near the cloud, you use your zap throttle mote extractor, and as I say, I'm out of range and it takes you instantly out of bird form. But when you get close enough, it will drain the cloud of motes, and we should see 3 motes of air from that one cloud. Now, it did take me a couple of minutes to find that cloud, and you have to remember that the beta is fairly dead, so I wouldn't get your hopes up on getting lots of these.
Tailoring's fairly straightforward though. There's so much from tailoring that you can make use of if you're a cloth wearer. You're not going to see many mages, priests, even the majority of healers are going to be tailoring, and let's have a look at exactly why.
Now, I'm not going to spend particularly long on this segment whatsoever because, honestly, if you wear cloth, you will probably go tailoring. So that you've got the Spell Strike set, which is the Spell Strike hood, and the pants. These are actually from, the recipes themselves are from dungeons. 2 specific bosses, in fact. So Grand Warlock Nether Curse, which is in Shattered Halls, and you've got Murmur from Shadow Labs. Now, the set bonus is what you're after here, which Wowhead's not actually showing for some reason. But the 2 set basically gives a chance when your harmful spells land to increase the damage of your spells and effects by 92 for 10 seconds. Now, what this basically is like another trinket. It's not quite as powerful as a trinket, but you know what I mean. The proc is really, really good to snapshot dots or whatever, just to have that big extra 92 spell damage when you're pumping. You'll notice on there it actually says requires tailoring. The items themselves don't require tailoring, but they're probably not worth using due to the amount of investment in gold that it would cost without actually being tailoring, because you want that set bonus. So yes, you can use both bits of Spell Strike together or separately without having tailoring, but to get the set bonus, that 92 spell damage proc, you have to be tailoring. Outside of Spell Strike, you have a similar set for the healers, so for their White Mend, which again, if we look on a separate database, we can see it increases your healing by up to 10% of your total intellect, which is huge for pretty much every healer, to be fair. Now, as I say, these are a big investment though. But then the ones that you're really probably bothered about is the Frozen Shadow Weave set for your Warlocks, your Frost Mages, your Shadow Priests, Frost Shock Shamans. It's just anyone who does shadow or frost damage. You've then got lots of other stuff that you can make, obviously, like the Primal Mooncloth bag and things like that, and you do start to get patterns that you can actually craft as well for like boots, belt. You know, there's lots of good recipes outside of just the sort of soulbound stuff that you're going to make. The other thing you can also make is the spell threads, so depending on whether you're Aldor or Scryers, you'll be able to either make the spell damage spell thread or the golden spell thread, which is for your healers. There's a lot going for tailoring, and it really just is that profession where if you wear cloth, you will probably go tailoring. As I say, I don't really want to lead you on, you know, or try and get you to go a profession that you don't necessarily want to go. If you're a priest and you want to go alchemy and jewel crafting, then crack on. But I'm just stating the facts of what each thing brings, what's in at phase 1, what's not in at phase 1, and then ultimately leave that decision up to you.
There's some hidden gems, excuse the pun, when it comes to jewel crafting. But obviously jewel crafting is not just about gems, because the personal gems you get, which we'll look through now, they're good, don't get me wrong, they are good, but ultimately you're only going to you'll make use of one of them, maybe 2 at max, because you stack 1 stat normally, don't you? You get hit captain and stack agility, or hit captain and stack spell power, whatever. So ultimately, do you need a big stamina gem outside of being a tank? Probably not. But the necks are really good, and let's look at why the necks can be useful in phase 1. So jewel crafting could be for you.
Before we get on to the necks, people will start saying, oh, what about the trinkets? So look, there's a few trinkets that you can get, but they're largely mediocre. So you've got a melee attack power by 54, an increase in stealth level with a use increase in attack power. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but ultimately you can get better. And then you've also got the Living Ruby Serpent, so stamina, intellect, and a use on effect, which is damage and healing by 150. Now, this is not actually that bad, and I could see maybe some prop paladins using this if they want to go for spell power and they don't want defense. I'm not saying it's going to be the best they can get, but that's the only sort of remotely sort of useful circumstance I can see this being used. Then you've got the Fell Steel Boar, which is attack power and it summons a boar. All 3 of those largely not worth talking about. But then the Dawnstone Crab is not actually that bad. So if you're struggling for a trinket as a tank and you're trying to get yourself crit immune, then 32 defense is nice. Increasing your dodge rating by 125 is also nice. As I say, ultimately you can get better. But for me, I think the tank trinket out of all of them is actually... Tanks probably come off the best with this trinket compared to the others. then if we look at things like this neck, so Chain of the Twilight Owl. Now, I just want to mention that if you unequip this after you've used the buff, or you leave the party, the buff will be lost. But it's 19 intellect, defense rating by 18, increases damage and healing by 21, and use improves spell crit hit chance of nearby party members by 2% for 30 minutes. So a 2% spell crit chance for basically you sacrificing a better neck slot. So you could technically, you know, let's say you was going to have something that had an extra 10 spell damage or something like that. Ultimately, it's not a massive damage loss for you, but you're giving everybody 2% crit, including yourself. So you can see how that would be useful. But there are others just like that, such as Embrace of the Dawn. 27 stamina, 19 intellect, 7 mana per 5. So don't get me wrong, little bit poor, but you can increase all nearby party members' stats by 10 for 30 minutes. Probably not quite as strong, in my opinion, as the 2% crit, but still a reasonably good neck if you're wanting to just get some buffs on a specific group. Maybe it's your big pumping warlock group and you want them all to have 2% extra crit chance. Maybe not 10 stats. And then for the melee, so you've got hit by 21, 5 weapon damage, and then use increasing crit strike rating by 28. So that's 2% crit rating. Now we've already spoke about Feral Druids and the Ring Enchant, where 2 gives 13 attack power. So you are going to get somewhere in the region of about 31 attack power, plus the 31 hit, plus 2% crit for you and the party. So again, you can see how that could be quite useful. And then another one, Eye of the Night. And there are a couple of absorb ones when it comes to specific schools of magic, such as Shadow or Poison, which we won't bother talking about at the moment, but that will definitely become relevant later on in the game. But this, so Eye of the Night, spell hit, spell crit, spell pen, and then 34 spell damage for everybody in the party. So again, these necks actually potentially can be very, very strong. So there is additionally gated behind reputation such as Consortium rep or Shatar rep. You can get a sort of fairly big gem that only you can use, and they're unique equipped, so you can only use one. This is my biggest issue with dual crafting, is actually these gems. You normally get, each class gets one that's useful, and then the others, unless you was really trying to maximise all your stats but at sort of the cost of something more useful for you, then they're not that great. So for example, you can get 26 healing, 24 attack power, 14 spell power, 12 crit, and 18 stamina. So 18 stamina obviously is nice for a tank. It's an extra 6 stamina compared to their ordinary gems that they'll be using. The same as for a spellcaster, it's 14 spell damage. You ordinarily would get 9, so it's an extra 5 spell damage. But if you was going dual crafting just for that one extra gem, then it's not a very big gain. It's certainly not as big a gain as the enchanting rings would be, for example. But still, if dual crafting is what you want to be because you want to make gold, you know, you've got a miner and you want to send all your ore to your dual crafter and then prospect it and maybe cut gems, put them on the auction house, then absolutely. But as far as personal power goes, outside of those necks that can be really useful for solid raid groups who are using these sort of things in their group, there's not much personal gain.
Well, and then level working, the profession we all once was. Let's look at why you probably won't go level working now.
Now, I promised myself I wouldn't rabbit on too much about level working, so I'm not going to. But obviously, as you probably know, and if you don't know, you definitely don't watch my channel enough, there has been a lot of changes to level working, particularly around drums. So drums of battle, which basically used to provide, back in original TBC, a permanent 5% haste buff, as long as you had at least 4 people in each party of your raid, basically rotating drums to keep it up, then yeah, you get a permanent 5% haste buff. But they've been changed, so they now give tinnitus, so they give a 2-minute debuff. So you can only use them, and by the way, they've got a 2-minute cooldown. So you only need one person in each party to just gain their full effect now, which is basically 30 seconds uptime of the 5% haste. There is, of course, things like drums of restoration, drums of panic, other drums of speed. There's, you know, there's more than just drums of haste, but the haste ones have always been the big ones. Now they're not really required, or you're still going to use them in short burst phases and things like that. You only need one person in each group that's level working. The real problem is the investment into, or this is completely my opinion, the investment into the items that level working makes is quite big, and you're only really going to use them pre-raid. There's, for example, the Elemental Shaman chest. You know, if they was level working, they'll keep that for quite a while, probably all the way through tier 4. But the other pieces, probably they will be replaced. You're probably not going to keep them. Same with Hunters. You can obviously go for like the Primal Strike. It's great for pre-raid bis, and apparently the actual Primal Strike sims better than using the actual Mal equivalent. It's not something I've done a great deal of research into because I don't play a hunter, I don't plan on playing a hunter, but when you look through all of these pre-raid BIS lists on various class discords or websites such as wowtbc.gg, there's the level working gear just don't show up a lot. I mean, I was on the fence of whether to go level working myself for the Primal Strike for my Feral Druid, but when I've really researched exactly what bits I would use through each tier, looking at how much of a gain it is, yes, it's a gain in pre-raid, so if you want to go absolute min-max, then level working really as a Shaman or as a Hunter or as a Feral Druid or as even a Rogue, obviously yes, it's definitely the way to go, just to get those early sort of power spike items, but they're just not going to last very long. It's not like the Tailoring sets that last, well, all the way through tier 5 potentially for some classes, and even Warlocks use a certain piece of Frozen Shadow Weave throughout tier 6 as well. So they've just not got the strength of the items compared to the tailoring sets. So for level working, outside of having that designated level worker in each group, it's not really something I would recommend many classes to take whatsoever. So we're not even going to look at what the items they make. We know they do make the level working leg enchants, which I'll put on screen, but outside of that, the actual sets themselves, which I've been flashing on while I've been talking as well, obviously you can see whether you want them or not, but ultimately level working's not really one that I'm overly excited about anymore.
And then last, but far from least, blacksmithing. Blacksmithing's gone through, it's a bit windy up here. Blacksmithing's gone through some changes. So what used to be one-handed weapons due to it coming in a later patch, they're now main hand. So that does change a bit for Shamans mainly. Shamans I would say specifically, actually. But let's look at why you might still go blacksmithing and what use you can get from it, and then I'll leave it up to you to make the decision whether it's the right profession for you.
So like I said, the main thing is Dragon Maw, which is the one-handed mace, is now main hand only. So the problem with this for Enhancement Shamans specifically is they want to use the same speed weapon in both hands. And there's not in pre-raid or in tier 4 two matching weapons that you can use which are 2.7 speed. Whereas it's still really strong for Fury Warriors, it's still really strong for Combat Rogues, but even with Combat Rogues, what I would bear in mind is it's only going to be useful probably through Tier 4, and then in Tier 5, I'm talking combat specifically here, if you use a Combat Rogue, you're then probably going to swap it for a weapon from SSC, which we're not going to go get ahead of ourselves and start looking in these items in depth, because we're just focusing on the professions. When it comes to the one hand, that's where we stand, or should I say main hand, unfortunately. When it comes to two hands, yeah, obviously Master Swordsmith, you can make good use as a Ret Paladin or even an Arms Warrior from this. If you're into PvP, you might want Stun Herald. If you're into PvP as a Rogue, I would say even the one-handed mace, if you're going like a Hemo mace, you know, build, then you're probably going to be using maces, and this can be strong in PvP as well, all round. But blacksmithing really does revolve around the weapons. But what I want to do quickly is just have a look at some. We always focus on the weaponsmith, but armorsmith has got some solid options as well. Now you got to remember, it's only really going to be plate gear. We're only going to be talking mainly about like Ret, Prot, Arms, Fury, you know, we're talking specifically plate wearers, but let's have a look at a few of the bits of armour that you can make. And remember, we're only focusing on phase 1, so we're not worried about what you can do with these professions in, you know, in tier 5, in tier 6, because yes, you get lots of recipes dropping, but in tier 4 there's not that many recipes, so you're only really talking about the things that you learn a trainer, more or less. But when we're talking armoursmith specific, there's a lot of items that a blacksmith can make that don't require armoursmith. The main ones that require armoursmith is Breastplate of the Kings, which has got hit, crit, 3 sockets, strength and stamina, which is a really, really solid chest, and it gets better through the phases. And then you've also got Never Chain Shirt for Mal users, which you're probably not going to go armoursmith as a hunter. Eventually this chest does get quite strong because it gets given a basically like a mini last stand, if you like, so it can be useful for not just DPS. You might even see prot warriors using this. Overall fairly solid. But outside of them, there's not really any armour smith only patterns, but there are some really solid items that you can actually learn to make, such as some of the weapons. So Hand of Eternity is a solid healing weapon, takes a lot of Corian bars, obviously 4 primal nevers, 8 primal might, so I'm not saying it's something that you're going to rush to craft, but Braces of the Green Fortress are always a solid one for tanks, but remember these are BOE, so you can just quite literally go and buy these off the auction house. As for like Oathkeeper's helm, you know, it's a nice prop paladin head. I'm not saying you're going to use it, but again, there's just some solid things that can still actually be made with blacksmithing, but don't require armorsmith. I mean, that's the main thing here. So overall, I don't know where it's going to come down to what class you are, what your aspirations are, and what you want to get out of your profession. But this about sums up blacksmithing. As I say, the two-handed weapons I've been flashing on screen while I've been speaking anyway. You know, they are solid. I'm only putting on the first phase version of them, but ultimately they're going to be better than pretty much anything you're going to get in pre-raid BIS. As I say, that is excluding enhancement shamans, because they'll probably go for blade fist because it's 2.6, and they can get another offhand which matches that 2.6 speed. So enhancement shamans, a little bit shafted on this, I would say. I'm sure we're still going to see enhancement shamans using it, and I'm not saying it's a bad weapon, but I think if you're min-maxing, you have to have matching weapon speeds from what little research I've done into enhancement shamans, but I've been told that from very, very good enhancement shamans who have played TBC private servers for literally years. So anyway, guys, that is everything that you need to know about blacksmithing, I think.
And then ultimately, boys and girls, if you found this useful, please make sure you do like, subscribe. Really does help the channel out. Keeps it growing, keeps more TBC content coming, and then hopefully Wrath of the Lich King. Oh, yeah. So, yeah. Thanks, peace out, see you on the next one.
Once again, massive shout out to all you guys up there that have joined the channel as a member, so that's as a supporter or a legendary supporter. Every single one of you, really, really appreciate it. It just keeps helping the channel grow, helps keeping me sat in this chair pumping out TBC content that hopefully you want to see. Come check me out over on twitch.tv/Scottejaye87, where I stream most nights, pretty much every night while the beta's out anyway, and then I'm probably going to be just doing 4 nights a week, which is still quite a lot. But again, massive thank you guys, all of you, even the subscribers. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe. Everything helps this channel keep growing from now until TBC and beyond. See you on the next one.